An old man was dropping walnuts into a basin of water. A boy stood beside him. The old man explained, "The walnuts that float are bad, and the ones that sink are good." A boy named Jake watched the whole thing closely. He whipped out his notebook and started taking notes. The old man realized this kid was trying to steal his secret. He held out his hand and demanded money from Jake, but Jake didn't have a penny on him. He went home without saying a word. On the way, he told himself he'd have to figure it all out on his own. Jake bought a whole bag of walnuts, dropped them in water, and started experimenting. At a roadside stand, the boy watched how the vendor worked, and whenever the seller next to her wasn't looking, he'd sneak a taste of his sugar syrup, then head home to come up with his own recipe. But the moment he tossed the walnuts into the pan, they popped like popcorn. Walnuts went flying all over the room, but Jake didn't give up. He was determined he had to make some money. A few days later, his first batch of candied walnuts turned out perfect. He had the butler taste them first, then gave a piece to his mom. The whole family loved them. Jake decided it was time to start selling. He rented a small stand in the food court at the mall. The mall was packed, but Jake had school during the day, so he left the stand in the butler's hands. Jake figured he'd have solid earnings by the end of the day, but reality hit hard. The first day's sales didn't even cover the electric bill. Jake noticed that customers were heading to the other stands instead. He told the butler, "You should pick up a few tricks like the other vendors do." But the next day, not a single box sold. Jake couldn't figure out what was going wrong, so he went to the market to see how people were selling. He saw some offering discounts, and others giving away freebies. But the real lightbulb moment came when he stepped into a public restroom. He saw a man begging right outside. The second anyone walked out, he'd ask for money, because people felt relieved after coming out, and were more than happy to give while in the crowd. That's when Jake had a brilliant idea. He rushed back to the mall and moved his stand to the parking lot entrance, paying a much higher rent. Now every person heading home grabbed a box of walnuts for the family. Sure enough, the next day his stand was mobbed. But just when things were going great, the mall sent a notice. He had to take the stand down, because the smoke from the walnut roaster had blackened the ceiling. Jake first thought he'd cover it all up. He tried to hide the stains by repainting the ceiling, but the paint started dripping right onto his product. In the end, he got kicked out of the mall. Jake went home and started packing his boxes. Then his mom broke the news. Dad's company had gone bankrupt. In a few days, they'd have to move in with relatives. Jake applied for a passport, but suddenly he changed his mind. He didn't want to leave anymore. He wanted to stay and get his business back on its feet.